Today, I'll be asking AI to build me crypto portfolios to see what they can come up with. We'll be asking ChatGPT, Gemini, and Grok to build me 2 different crypto portfolios. The first time around will be just a vague question to see what they can come up with without too much influence. And then on the second time of asking, I'll be asking for a more structured, well-defined, specific portfolio, tapping into some hot narratives and sectors. Some interesting results for sure. If you do enjoy the video, don't forget to drop a like, don't forget to subscribe, but let's get started. All right, so first up is ChatGPT, probably the most popular AI chatbot out of the 3. But the question that I'm asking here, like I said, relatively vague, is to create a well-balanced crypto portfolio and include the percentage allocation. So no real influence or direction to what coins I want to be included in this one, just to see what they can come up with. So to start the answer, it's the usual stuff, depending on risk tolerance, investment goals, blah, blah, blah. Kind of feels like a little bit of a disclaimer from ChatGPT. The assumptions here are the investment goals are 2 to 5 years with a moderate risk profile, 10k starting balance with rebalancing every 3 to 6 months. But I like the way ChatGPT has structured this here. It's very, straightforward and easy to break down. So let's look at what they offered. So core holdings to get going. Bitcoin, no real surprise, to be honest, 35% allocation, so just over 1/3 in Bitcoin, and I kind of respect it. I actually have around 40% myself in Bitcoin right now, so far so good. Ethereum, 25%, it's still number 2 despite the hate that it's had over the last few, months and years. It's looking a lot better right now, and yeah, 25%. Some would argue a little bit less maybe, but I'm kind of cool with that. Then we move into layer 1s and smart contract platforms. So Solana takes 7%, and I actually have around 10% in Solana, and I think around 20% in Ethereum. So I think ChatGPT has probably had a sneak peek at my private portfolio to come to some of these conclusions. And then we have Avalanche, which is interesting, with around 4%. Now, there's a lot of L1s that the AI bot could have recommended here. You have the likes of Sui and some others there that are probably a bit more relevant than Avalanche right now. But yeah, I see good things coming from Avalanche, so that's cool. Then moving on to the next sector, it's a bit of DeFi exposure. And when we think about DeFi, maybe not flavor of the month right now, it's not AI, it's not RWA, but when you're thinking 2 to 5 years, I can kind of understand why DeFi would be in there. These are typically, revenue generating platforms that are doing pretty well, and actual companies and businesses, not just roadmaps and promises. So first of all, we have Aave, 3%, leading lending protocol. I'm totally cool with that. I have Aave in my own portfolio as well. Then we have Uniswap with 3%. I mean, it's not the most flashy investment, but a lot of people who are in the trenches on chain on Ethereum are still using Uniswap, so I completely get it. You've got Curve then, or Lido with 2%, which is obviously yield or staking infrastructure. So yeah, some pretty nice additions there. Maybe a little bit too much exposure to DeFi overall, potentially. Maybe no need for all 3 or 4. Then we have infrastructure and oracles, just Chainlink here. Again, going back to that kind of 2 to 5 year thing, oracles are very important, and Chainlink is the leader. So again, not the most exciting or flashy these days, but can understand it being in a longer term portfolio. We've got gaming and metaverse. This one's probably up for debate. Maybe the part of the portfolio that I like the least. I don't really feel any need to have, I don't see any Web3 gaming meta going on this cycle and stuff. Long term maybe, but yeah, not the most exciting for me there. And then around 10% in stable coins. So it'll be interesting to see what the other 2 recommend when it comes to stable coin allowances. But overall, I think it's pretty solid, a pretty decent, well-rounded portfolio without it being too risky, especially for the average crypto standards. Next up, we have Grok. So let's see what Elon's creation can come up with. So asking the exact same question, complete copy pasta, to see how different this looks compared to what we just seen. So kicking off with Bitcoin, 40% this time, so slightly higher, very similar to my current portfolio, so that's cool. We have Ethereum at 25% again, so no change there. Stablecoins at 15% rather than 10%, acting as dry powder, so you can deploy on dips and so on, and I kind of respect it, but maybe at this point of the cycle I'd be a tiny bit lower than that. We then have the mid-cap altcoins, so you've got the likes of Solana and Cardano. Not entirely sure how ADA's made the list, like no hate, but I'm pretty sure there's some better options out there when it comes to the L1 space. Then you've got small cap altcoins. It doesn't really give any examples, but it does say emerging DeFi or AI driven tokens at 5%. And then again, you've got this kind of gaming and metaverse narrative going on within the AI bots. DeFi tagged into that as well with another 5%, and it does give a couple of examples here, such as Aave and Axie Infinity, which of course are the kind of big names you think about when you think about DeFi or Web3 gaming. So again, you kind of got the typical stuff, rebalancing, risk management, storage, and it's pretty handy for it to include in the answer, but not what we're focusing on right now. So the breakdown is right there. Relatively similar to what ChatGPT has to offer, but some slight tweaks and changes. And then because it didn't really give any examples of small cap altcoins, I did ask for a few examples here, which was interesting. So it went with Solaxi. I'll be honest, never really heard of it. Pepe Unchained. Why this one? And yeah, again, I'm just kind of like interested to how it's come to the conclusion. Snorterbot, which is a Telegram bot for probably trading on, never heard of it again, to be honest, under 100 mil market cap. So it's really giving us a few low cap gems here, all under 100 mil market cap. Polytrade with a market cap of 19 million. Claypool, which is a project, probably the only project on this list I actually know, at an 80 mil market cap, a solid RWA pick in my opinion. And then you've got the likes of Fowler Network, GameSwift, Dymo, Tara, NLS, and I'll be honest, even those, never really heard of them. Might have seen the name once or twice, but never looked into them. And yeah, maybe this is a prompt for me to actually look into and dive into these projects and see what they have to offer, considering Grok clearly favors them for one reason or another. But yeah, interesting to see a few small altcoin picks there. Lastly, we have Google's Gemini, and I'll be honest, on a day-to-day basis, I actually prefer Gemini. I use it the most out of the three, so I've got high hopes for this one. Let's see what Gemini has to offer when asking that exact same question again. So the usual kind of disclaimers, rebalancing, risk tolerance, all that kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then we've got the portfolio. So going back to ChatGPT, 35% in Bitcoin, 25% in Ethereum, and then it's allowing 20% for a few different large caps. So making the shortlist here is Solana, Polkadot, Chainlink, and Avalanche. So Polkadot, a new name not mentioned so far in the video, but the other three have made a second or third appearance in the video so far, so pretty solid. And then we've got Binance, which is specifically Binance at 5%, which, yeah, again, I guess when you come to large caps, it is up there. It's one of the biggest coins in the crypto space. Then next on the list, we have emerging and mid-cap altcoins around 10%. So we're talking AI, DePIN, gaming, RWA, layer 2s. So I think Gemini has done a good job here of picking up some hot narratives in sectors, to be fair. 5% stable coins, so a little bit more risky than the other two, which as a degenerate, I kind of respect. And then you've got 5% for other, which is DeFi, NFTs, Metaverse. Again, not sure on Metaverse, not sure on NFTs as well, but DeFi, in my opinion, I can kind of understand. So that's the breakdown there from Gemini. Overall, I kind of like it. It's very similar, of course, but I think this probably is the favorite of the three, just about, probably due to the stablecoin allowance and a couple of the names mentioned. But again, there was no specific names mentioned for the mid-cap altcoins. So I asked for some examples for under section 3. So this will be very similar to what we got with Grok. And on this list, under the AI sector, we've got Render, AKT, BitTensor, and FET. If you've watched my previous videos, you'll know I really like BitTensor, and I've previously held FET. So good to see them names on the list. When it comes to Deepin, which is a pretty hot narrative, I guess. Maybe not the best right now, but it's definitely had its moments. You've got Helium, Filecoin, Arweave, and IOTX. Gaming and Metaverse, IMX, Gala, Axie Infinity, kind of what you would expect. Not sure why Arbitrum is on here rather than L2, but yeah, that's there. Then it comes to RWA, you've got CFG, Ondo probably the biggest name, to be completely honest, and then Polymesh, which I don't actually know much about. And then when it comes to L2s, Arbitrum makes the list again, OP, Matic, and then you've got Starknet and ZK Sync. So some different L2s in terms of, ones that launched last year with airdrops and that kind of stuff. Maybe a little bit disappointing now, 1 year on, 18 months on, but again, some good suggestions in that list, but a lot that I'm not too sure about. So now we'll go back to ChatGPT, but this time asking for a more specific portfolio. I'm going to ask all 3 of them to create another crypto portfolio, but this time have slightly heavier risk and focus on coins that fall within the RWA, AI, and meme coin sectors, giving the specific coins and their percentage allocations. Now, these are 3 sectors, narratives that I am pretty bullish on, generally speaking. So it will be interesting now to see if they really ramp up on the risk. And, these chatbots show their inner degenerate. So when focusing on these, again, very clean layout from ChatGPT. There are a few coins that have already been mentioned, but here we go. So when it comes to RWA, 10% goes towards Ondo. No surprise, really. Like I said, one of the biggest names. We've got CFG making another appearance with 5%. And then we've got TokenFi by Floki, which is a coin that I actually have a bag of with 3%. So pretty good to see that name in the list as well. When it comes to AI, we've got FET again, we've got Render, and we've got AKT again, with an overall percentage 20%, FET being the leader there, which isn't too much of a surprise. And then when it comes to meme coins, bearing in mind that no meme coin has been mentioned so far, and I can understand that. We've got a portfolio here where, the AI bot clearly doesn't want to get involved with very speculative assets, so respectable. But I've asked for them this time, and it's give Doge with 7%, Pepe with 5%, and Bonk with 3%, and also Brett with 2% there. So yeah, I mean, they're pretty big market cap meme coins. They're probably known as blue chip memes at this point, and pretty timeless in a lot of ways. So a bit more risk adding meme coins, but ChatGPT has gone with the safer options in that department. And then for core hedge stability, you've got the stable coins at 10% or Ethereum with 10%, which even that in itself, ETH rather than USD, is kind of like your stable pot, is relatively risky. So yeah, a little bit more degen from ChatGPT there. Let's see now if Grok can offer something different with that exact same question. So this time, RWA 25%. You've got Polytrade in there, 19 mil market cap, already made an appearance on the list earlier. 15% in a 19 mil market cap is pretty degenerate, to be fair, so it definitely is taking some more risk. You've got Ondo at 10%, no real surprise. And then you've got a few AI coins. Now again, it's going with Solex, which was mentioned earlier, being the largest percentage allocation despite the market cap being under 100 mil. So again, in this sector, more risk being taken. And then you've got AIOZ, 10%, good coin, I hold it myself. Chain GPT at 10%, and then you move on to meme coin, 35% allocation. Pepe Unchained mentioned again, 15%. You've got Goat with 10%, which this one caught me by surprise a little bit. I'm not entirely sure why Goat is in there, but I guess because of that AI kind of relation that it has, maybe that's why it's made the list. And then you've got Bonk at 10% as well, with a 5% allocation to stable coins. So interesting to see market caps on this list, 19 mil, then of course a bigger one here, but then under 100, 500, 200, under 100 again, 500, 1.5 billion, and then of course USDC. So, you know, a few low cap gems in the list, which I respect, but not the names that I personally would have gone for. All right, so last up on the list is Gemini's more risky portfolio, and it's starting with a bigger allocation to RWA. We've got 40% here, 15% to Ondo, which has been consistent throughout all of these portfolios, 10% to CFG making another appearance, 10% to PolyX, which seems to be a popular pick, and then 5% to MakerDAO, which is making its first appearance on this video. We then have 35% in AI, which is 15% to BitTensor, which I love, I'll be honest, 10% to Render, and then 10% to AKT. So, you know, the same names kind of cropping up, and these are pretty much like blue chip AI crypto projects within that specific niche or sector. And then a smaller allocation going to meme coins, which, you know, I can kind of understand with some new and existing names making the list again. We've got Pepe again, 8%, Bonk at 7%. So, you know, arguably one of the biggest Ethereum meme coins, one of the biggest Solana meme coins, and then Dog with Hat making a first appearance there. So that one's a little bit surprising, but, you know, it's still a pretty big, decent size market cap. And then 5% going towards stable coins. So Gemini really keeping the stablecoin amount nice and low for the second time. All right, so it's time to pick favorites. So doing a quick run through now of all three of the first portfolios, which I give the relatively vague instructions for. Now, the thing with ChatGPT is I think they've overdone it slightly with DeFi exposure, and I'm also not keen on this gaming metaverse allocation, but it is only 2%. So overall, I think it's very solid. And again, kind of like with that 2 to 5 year outlook, I completely respect it. So I don't think it's terrible. It's a pretty decent portfolio. When it comes to Grok, I liked how obviously it's got the same amount of Bitcoin as me, very similar with Ethereum. Stablecoin's a little high, but I can completely understand it. The only problem with Grok was I didn't actually love the altcoin examples that it give in that follow-up question. So again, fairly solid, but at this point I'd probably lean towards ChatGPT myself. And then when it comes to Gemini, I think this is my favorite. I actually really like, one, the fact that there's only 5% in stablecoins, and two, I like that it picks out some pretty good narratives and sectors that I'm bullish on, and that became clear in the second part of the video. So I think, although there's not loads in it, I would be leading towards Gemini's portfolio in this case. And when it comes to the other three, we'll pull them up now. In this first one with ChatGPT again, I like it. I think it's pretty well rounded. What I like as well is decent amounts in all three of the different sectors that I mentioned, so RWA, AI, and meme coins. I think the picks on the meme coins here are pretty good, pretty solid, especially, you know, not too crazy risk, I guess. And, you know, the only problem here is for me, I think BitTensor has to be in the list. You know, it's no secret that I am massively bullish on Tau. So, but yeah, again, very, very solid. Then when it comes to Grok this time around, again, some of these names I'm not keen on. I wouldn't personally be looking for so much exposure to Pepe Unchained and Goat. I don't think Goat, I think it'll pump, but, you know, I think there's better options out there. AIOZ, like I said, was good to see in there, but again, it's not my favorite portfolio, especially putting 15% towards a 19 mil market cap coin. You know, I asked for risk, but, you know, maybe that is a little bit too much. And then when it comes to Gemini, you know, there's a few names in here that I'm not overly keen on or just don't know enough about. But I think the 15% to Ondo is pretty good, pretty sensible. MakerDAO, not really sure why that made the list. No hate, just not sure why it's there. BitTensor, of course, this makes me happy. And then Dog with Hat here. I think there's better options again. Pepe and Bonk, yep, I get it. Blue chip players. Dog with Hat, probably something more relevant that can outperform there. And then 5% again to stables. So this one's harder to call, I think, because, you know, there's some coins in all of them that I like, and then there's coins across all three of them that I'm not overly keen on. I'd probably lean towards ChatGPT on this one. I think it's close, Gemini second, but I think one thing I would say, in my opinion, is Grok has underperformed on both of these. So yeah, let me know down below in the comments which ones you preferred. It'd be really interesting to hear that from you guys as well. But this was a bit more of a fun video. Like I said before, if you did enjoy it, do drop a like, do subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.